The Matrix and A Course in Miracles share one of the same central revelations. What you take to be reality is heavily conditioned perception sustained by identification and belief. Neo begins with a subtle but persistent intuition. Something is wrong with the world. That intuition matters spiritually. ACIM often begins not with certainty, but with disillusionment. Success doesn't satisfy. Roles feel artificial. Repetition feels mechanical. Identity feels unstable. The world feels strangely dreamlike. Neo senses the script before he understands it. Then comes the choice between the pills. Morpheus offers a symbolic decision: remain inside familiar illusion or risk awakening into unsettling truth. That parallels ACIM's invitation almost exactly. The ego promises comfort through familiarity, routines, identity, social conditioning, perceptual consensus, body identification. Spirit invites questioning the framework itself. And importantly, awakening is initially disorienting, not glamorous. Neo does not awaken into instant bliss. He awakens into uncertainty. That is psychologically honest. ACIM repeatedly dismantles the ego's assumptions about self, world, time, body, control, specialness. The ego experiences this destabilization as threatening because its reality structure depends upon unquestioned identification. Then there is the Matrix itself. The Matrix functions as a collective dream world sustained by unconscious participation. Very ACIM-like. The Course describes the world of separation as a projection arising from the belief in separation from God and each other. Not merely a fake computer simulation, literally, but a perceptual system organized around fear, fragmentation, and misidentification. People inside the Matrix believe the dream absolutely because they are immersed in it continuously. That mirrors ego consciousness. Conditioning feels real because it is habitual. And then comes body identification. Neo believes he is the body avatar moving through the Matrix. ACIM similarly challenges the assumption I'm this vulnerable, separate organism. The body becomes the central reference point for identity in the ego system. Pleasure, pain, status, survival, comparison, fear. But the movie gradually reveals that perception and limitation are more flexible than assumed. Neo bends physical rules once identification loosens. Now, ACIM would not interpret this as superhero metaphysics, literally. The deeper symbolic meaning matters. Limitation is tied to belief structures. The ego says these boundaries define you absolutely. Awakening begins questioning those boundaries. Then there are the agents. Agent Smith especially resembles the ego defense system. Cold, mechanical, controlling, reactive against awakening. The agents preserve the Matrix by suppressing deviation. The ego functions similarly psychologically. Whenever awareness expands, the ego often responds with fear, doubt, distraction, defensiveness, attack thoughts, identity reinforcement. Not because awakening is dangerous, but because the ego interprets awakening as its own death. Smith is particularly fascinating because he is disgusted by humanity while simultaneously trapped within the system he defends. The ego hates the very world it manufactures. ACIM points toward this paradox too. The ego creates separation and then suffers from separation. Another huge overlap: belief shapes experience. Morpheus tells Neo, you have to let it all go. Fear, doubt, disbelief. Ace similarly teaches that perception is filtered through belief. Miracles occur through shifts in mind, not manipulation of external reality first. The spoon scene is especially ACIM-like. Spoon Boy says, there is no spoon. This often gets repeated superficially, but symbolically it points toward the instability of perceived form. ACIM says forms are not ultimate reality. Perception is interpretive, symbolic, and conditioned. But an important nuance: ACIM is not inviting denial of experience through dissociation. It is inviting release of absolute identification with form. The Oracle is another interesting figure. Oracle functions somewhat like the Holy Spirit archetype, guiding without coercion, offering reflection rather than control, meeting people where they are psychologically. She does not force awakening. She invites recognition. That is important in ACIM too. Truth cannot be imposed meaningfully. It must be willingly received. Cypher represents another spiritual danger, preferring comfortable illusion over difficult truth. Cypher knows the Matrix is false, but wants the pleasure of unconsciousness back. That is psychologically profound. Awakening is not automatically preferred by the ego. The ego often prefers familiar suffering over uncertain freedom. And then there's Neo's death and resurrection sequence. Symbolically, the old identity dies. Fear loosens. Identification shifts. He no longer experiences himself merely as a threatened separate self trapped inside the matrix. And suddenly the structure looks different. That parallels ACIM forgiveness. The world may still appear, but its meaning changes completely when interpreted through love rather than fear. Neo begins seeing the code underneath appearances. ACIM points toward a similar shift, seeing beyond surface perception into the thought system organizing experience. Not special psychic powers, clearer awareness. And perhaps the deepest overlap between the Matrix and ACIM is this. The prison is not primarily external. The prison is identification. Identification with fear, with separation, with limitation, with the self-concept, with the script. Freedom begins not when the world changes first, but when belief in the false self loosens. The ego says, this world defines you. Spirit asks, what if you are the awareness dreaming the world of separation?